Welcome, everyone, to my online course for research methods in psychology. My name is Frank Losciavo, and I will be your tour guide today. I have just a few things to discuss with you, so sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. In this chapter, we've been discussing sources of information, and we've learned that research psychologists typically publish their discoveries about human thought and behavior in scientific journals. But what about all the other scientific information we see published in print and online? For example, scientific research is often discussed during TV news segments, within popular print magazines, and on social media. To what extent can we trust that information, and how can we verify if that information is correct? In this video, I'll remind you how important it is for us to be skeptical of all scientific research claims, and I'll show you how we can track down the journal articles that TV reporters, journalists, and social media influencers base their stories on. All right, let's get to work. It's important to consider that journal articles and articles in the popular media have different audiences in mind, and thus they have different goals to achieve. First, let's talk about journal articles. As you've discovered, journal articles tend to include lots of detail and lots of technical information. That's because journal articles are intended for an audience of professional psychologists who are scholars, researchers, professors, and practitioners. So, journal articles include all the details that those professionals want to see, the details they need to see to truly understand the results of the study. Generally speaking, professional psychologists are not interested in a summary of the research. They want to read all the gory details on their own, so they can fully understand how the new findings contribute to our collective understanding of human thought and behavior. Okay, let's compare journal articles with scientific information shared via popular media. TV news producers, magazine writers, and social media influencers have a very different audience in mind and very different goals for sharing information about scientific research. Scientific information shared via popular media targets the general public, normal, everyday people, many who have no background in psychology or research methods or statistics, and many of those people lack basic critical thinking skills. So they're just looking for something interesting to read, something light. They're not interested in knowing every little detail of a research report. They just want to know the bottom line. In other words, the general public wants a summary of the research, and they want that summary to be as entertaining as possible. So, now you're probably starting to see where some problems can develop. Not all TV producers, magazine writers, and social media influencers have enough training in psychology or research methods to accurately summarize a complicated journal article. And because TV news producers, magazine writers, and social media influencers want to maximize the number of people who watch their videos and read their posts, it's possible that they will misrepresent the science. It's possible that they won't tell the whole story of the data because the whole story might be complicated, and complicated stories aren't very entertaining. It's also possible that they will oversell the research results, overly sensationalize the research findings, because they know those exaggerations will make their stories more popular. In other words, it's possible that scientific information shared in the popular media will contain some level of disinformation. So we need to accept that disinformation is out there, and that it poses a potential danger to our ultimate mission, which is to discover the truth about human thought and behavior. That means we need to rely on a good, strong scientific attitude. You might recall that a scientific attitude is based on being open-minded yet skeptical about all scientific claims. As we've learned, a scientific attitude is about being open but not too gullible. It's about being skeptical but not too cynical. A scientific attitude forces us to ask lots of questions. It forces us to demand evidence, because we can't make sense of scientific claims until we have sufficient detail about the research upon which those claims have been based. So, what can you do to become more information literate? This graphic provides a few good suggestions. For example, once you realize that TV news producers, magazine writers, and social media influencers are primarily interested in maximizing the number of people who watch their videos and read their posts, then it becomes easier to see that they might have ulterior motives that conflict with the goals of science. So, instead of focusing on evidence contained within original journal articles, those sources might summarize psychological research in ways that further their own careers, or their own personal interests, or possibly their own political agenda. Ultimately, it's up to you to verify if TV news and social media are accurately representing the published research. So, if you discover a fascinating story about psychological research and you're interested in sharing that story with others, it makes sense to find the original journal article and to check out a few details first. And if you discover a fascinating story about psychological research and you think the research findings might help you in your own life, it makes sense to find the original journal article first, before quitting your job, before breaking up with your boyfriend, before making any big changes that would be difficult to walk back. The bottom line is that it's up to you to check out the veracity of the scientific information you see summarized on TV, in print, and online. The good news is that we've already begun to learn how to do that. For example, we've started learning how to find journal articles by searching PsycInfo and other databases. Let me give you a quick example. I recently came upon a news story while browsing my social media. The headline read, "One sleepless night can rapidly reverse depression for several days." That sounds amazing, doesn't it? So many people are depressed nowadays. Maybe sleep deprivation can help provide a solution. The brief article on social media didn't have much information, but it suggested that sleep loss increases the release of dopamine, and that helps rewire the brain. I'm open to that general idea, but I'm always skeptical about therapies that claim to rewire the brain, because our brains aren't wired like electronic devices. Neural processing is more complicated than that. So I thought it would be interesting to find the original journal article containing this research. I started by Googling the headline I saw on social media. "One sleepless night can rapidly reverse depression for several days." From that search, I found a Northwestern University website that contained nearly identical information. From that Northwestern website, I learned that the original research was published in a November issue of the journal Neuron. I also learned that the first author of the article has the last name Wu, W-U. That's a lot of great information. So I Googled the journal Neuron, connected to its homepage, and then searched for a recent article by an author named Wu. And like magic, there it was. The original article is entitled "Dopamine Pathways Mediating Affective State Transitions After Sleep Loss." After clicking on the PDF, I was able to open the article. But not everyone can open the article so easily. Remember, some journal articles are hidden behind paywalls. I know that's frustrating, but that's the publishing business. I'm using an Ohio University computer with an Ohio University IP address, and Ohio University subscribes to this journal. So here's the article in front of me. If it's important for you to find a journal article, and the article is hidden behind a paywall, consider visiting your local public library or your local university library. Those libraries are likely to have access to journals you wouldn't have access to while at home. One thing I find fascinating about this article is that it has a graphical abstract. How cool is that? Honestly, I don't think I've ever seen a graphical abstract before, but take a look at it. Once I saw it, I immediately assumed this research was based on mice, and after looking through the article, I found that I was right. So it's possible that sleep deprivation may help alleviate depression in human beings, but that's not what this research focused on at all. And let me leave you with this question. How exactly do you study depression in mice? We know how to measure depression in human beings, and it's mostly based on asking people about their symptoms, asking people how they feel. You can't do that with mice. Do you see my point? Although this brief story on social media made me think the researchers studied depression and sleep deprivation in human beings, they actually studied something different altogether. If you are going to be information literate, you'll need to sift through a lot of misleading, poorly summarized scientific research via the popular media. Although there are great writers in popular media sharing wonderful, accurate information about scientific progress, it's tough to know when you're reading their articles or when you're reading misinformation. So, when it's important, when your credibility is on the line, when your personal happiness is on the line, do what's necessary to find the original journal articles that contain the original research reports summarized on TV, in magazines, and on social media. If you rely on journal articles, on those primary sources of information, you'll be much more informed and much more likely to make informed decisions based on scientific evidence. Well, that's it for this section, but stay tuned because I'll have more to say about research methods in the next video.